Okay, I'm finally seated and my laptop's in front of me. So this is it. This is the 1K Q&A. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and finally this is the final video of the end of the year series. I am so happy, thankful. I don't know. I don't have any words. And honestly, this has been like a very tedious time for me. Like, although I was on a break from work, I had to film videos every day, edit it, put it out there for a premiere. So it was like a very nice series, in my opinion. Will I do this again? I'm not sure. Let's see. But will I stop this? Stop. As I was saying, will I do this again? Yes, I may at the end of the year. But today, it's time that I wear my spectacles and I log into my YouTube account so that I can check all your comments, all your questions in the comments on YouTube. Okay, so here's the deal, right? I am going to be looking at all the questions like real time, like I said. I would be looking at these questions and giving you on the spot answers. I have not like actually seen the questions. I only browsed through them just to check if actually someone commented on it, because my biggest fear was not getting any questions after all. So, but I do have quite a few questions and I know that. And that being said, I'm just going to sign in. So another point which is very important is that if you've not added your questions on this video, on the Q&A video, I will not be able to answer them, because for the others, I like I said, I do not get all notifications, right, of the questions put in. Like, I do get some, I don't get some, and that's just like a stupid thing that happens very often. So yeah, and also if you have any questions and you want them answered, then please don't comment on this video. Okay, I'm not going to reply, or I may not be able to check all of this stuff. I will be still referring to the Q&A video. If you have more questions and if there are many people who want to post questions, then please use that video. Don't use this video, please. I will not be able to see them on this video. Now that this is cleared, I'm just logging in. Yes, I'm just logging in, and I'll get back to you after I log in and once the video is open in front of me. Okay, cool. So the video is out in front of me, and I'm going to be answering the question from the oldest one to the newest, and all the questions will be covered. So yeah, let's start with the Q&A, my first ever Q&A. Okay, so Smriti from Santreet asks, okay, she says first. Okay, hi Smriti, thanks for being the first commenter. Okay, that's very sweet. And the question is, if you had to have a dinner party and call 3 fictional characters, who would they be and why? Okay, so if I want to call like 3 fictional characters, I would call 3 of my favorite fictional characters, to be honest. And I think the first one I would call would be Zachary from Sea of Poppies by Amitabh Ghosh. So Zachary is a well-mannered gentleman. He is also a black man from Baltimore, and basically he was born into slavery, but now he is kind of the captain of the ship, and he is a very well-mannered person. And honestly, I really admired his personality when I read the book first. So the first one has to be Zachary. The next person that I would call over. Now I have to think about this. Oh my god. I think it would be. Now this is not like a fiction. This is a fictional character. I don't know. There's a lot of debate on this. But for me, she's a fictional character because I read her in the Forest of Enchantments, and that's Sita. One of the biggest reasons why I like Forest of Enchantments is because the way Sita is written. The thing is, in the Ramayana, Sita is just there in the backdrop. It's just, she's just there for the sake of, enticing the whole war situation between Ram and Ravana, right? Because if Sita would not have been kidnapped, then the war would not have happened. and dharma would not have won, against adharma. So the thing is, whenever I read general Ramayana adaptations, like stories that have been told to us from, like our grandparents told us, I've always thought Sita has been a very meek character per se, who actually does a lot of who just like obeys her husband, and she's like very nice and stuff like that. But in Forest of Enchantments, the reason I loved Sita a lot is because she is, although she's shown as this meek person, she has a personality to her, and her personality kind of comes out during that whole story. And that's why I appreciate Forest of Enchantments a lot, because it tried to do what the original Ramayana did not do, and it's like a fresh breath of air. So, of course, I would be inviting the Sita, especially from the Forest of Enchantments, as my guest. Now, I was thinking of Draupadi initially, Draupadi from the Palace of Illusions by Chitravanshi Divakaruni, but then I already know that Draupadi is kind of like a character that's well liked within the Mahabharata, and she's pretty much like an outspoken woman in the original epic tale as well. But Sita, for that matter, is not, and I really admire the way Banerjee Divakaruni wrote Sita. So that's that. And the third one, this is very difficult, okay? Like, I need to select a third character that I really loved a lot. It's very tough. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Okay, let me think for a while, because this is difficult.
2,000 years later.
Okay, it was my idea to do this on the spot, and I have to be blamed for it. But I think one of my favorite characters, I would say the third character, would be Robert Langdon from the, the famous Dan Brown series. I'm sorry, Smriti. I mean, I try to think of interesting people that I really like. And although I don't like Dan Brown, I like Robert Langdon. And I was just thinking back to all the books that I might have read where I would have thought that, oh, you know what, I want to meet this person in real life. And I remember when I read, Dan Brown books when I was of an impressionable age, I really felt like, yes, I want to meet Robert Langdon, and I want to discuss like history and mythology and theology with him. So yeah, I think it's not an ideal answer, but that's what I could think of on the spot. And now it makes me realize that I should not have done things on the spot. Okay, next question. Oh, okay. Smriti asked another question. Am I your favorite? You can say yes. It's fine. Oh, you're my favorite, Smriti. It's okay. I love you, Smriti. Okay. The next one is from Brian. Brian asks, if I were to visit India after COVID, any recommendations on which places should I visit? The whole of India, dude. Like the whole of India. Okay. Now, me being an Indian myself, I have not traveled enough. Okay. Of course, you have to like visit the cities. Mumbai, Delhi, Jaipur. Jaipur is a beautiful city, by the way. Of course, Kerala, my home state. Pondicherry. Go to every state. Like every state has something different to offer. And one of the biggest things about India is that every 2 kilometers, the food changes. The way of making things, making food or the cuisine, like the whole thing changes. And also, the states are divided as per languages, if you don't know, and if you're not from India. So it's like every state you go to, they're speaking a different language, and in every state they have different dialects as well. So my point is, visit the whole of India. Okay, after COVID, you should start. I would say if you are landing, it depends upon where are you landing. Like if you are landing in Bombay, then go south and then go north. Visit the places around. If you're going to Delhi, then go to the north side, Shimla, and the hill stations out there. Also, you can go to Calcutta. It's on the east side. You have to go to the northeast. Don't forget the northeast. So every corner of India is like tourism worthy. Okay, and that's what they call it, incredible India for a reason. My point is, I hope I answered your question. My point is all of India. It just depends when you make your itinerary. Okay, I hope I said the word correctly. Just make sure that the city you're landing in, like start from there and then go to the major hubs or the cities in the north, south, east of India in order to traverse to other places from there. So that's that. Also, that being said, the north of India has a very different culture. The south of India has a very different culture. The east of India as well, central India, like every state in India has a different culture. So it will be like a very rich and a diverse experience as well traveling through India. So that's that. Okay. So meanwhile, I'm just hearting all the comments that I've already answered so that I'm not confused. Uh, hmm. Shalu asks, what is the most underrated read that you would recommend me to pick up sometime soon? I think most Indian reads are generally underrated. Uh, One Indian read that I can tell you is underrated is a short story book called The Adivasi Will Not Dance by Hansda Sovenda Shekhar. It is a good short story book. Yes, there are some explicit stories in it which involve prostitution and stuff like that, but it's a very nice book to pick up, which I think is a highly, highly underrated book. Other than that, I think this is not underrated now because I know many people who've been reading it of recent, and that is Bombay Balchao by Jane Borges. I can never stop recommending this book. Like anyone who picks up this book will love it. Like this book is like chef's kiss, literally. Okay, and also I would say, like again, I want to give you a book set in India because generally people don't tend to read those books. I would say another underrated book would be, yeah, okay, I don't remember. I don't recollect the name of the book, so I'll let you know. But yeah, this is like, these are like two underrated books that you have to pick up. Like it's really, really important that you read these books. So yeah, I mean, important, yeah, I mean, it's fun to read one of them and it's important to read the other. So that's that. So yeah, these are the underrated reads that I have on my brain at this point of time. Okay, so Key from Books and Key asks, what gives you the motivation to make and film booktube videos? Why not just read and enjoy the books instead? So basically, I've kind of covered this in my Thank You 2020 video, but let me tell you that basically I wanted to like have a community where I could talk about books. I wanted to like be a part of the community and get more recommendations. For a long time, I was just like a watcher on BookTube and I used to like read a lot of recommended books, but then I realized that maybe if I could also contribute and be a part of the larger community, it would be a very helpful thing for me. And that's why I started BookTube in the first place, because there were not many people who were talking about books at that point of time. And then later on I got back because of the Asian TBR and Asian Readathon TBR, and I really, really loved the Asian Readathon TBR thing a lot. I love people's videos, so I decided that I have to restart BookTube. So that's that. So yeah, and for the motivation, I think the motivation is like, I just fucking love books. Okay, so I just like keep talking about it like day in day out. I think my family gets a lot bored. Like, so I come from a family of readers, but when most of my family does academic reading a lot, they don't read a lot of fiction. Like the reason I read a lot is because my parents themselves are readers, and yeah, they read a lot of like subject matter per se, because my dad's like, you know, a PhD in physics, my mom's MSc in maths, so you know, they read their own subjects very well in detail and stuff like that. So yeah, the point is academic reading runs in my family, and I lost my train of thought, but let me get back. So this is the motivation, right? The motivation that since I don't have anyone in my family to talk to books about because they do a lot of academic reading, I basically just make videos on BookTube, and that itself keeps me motivated, and I'm happy so far because I've made a lot of friends, including Yuki. So yeah, that's that. Okay, so the next question is Neetu. She asked, what's your favorite subgenre of nonfiction? What is the favorite nonfiction book of 2020 and one book you are really looking forward to read in 2021? So the point is, with the subgenre of nonfiction, I love memoirs. Like memoirs are my favorite subgenre of nonfiction. And although I started with self-help, I used to hate nonfiction at a point of time just because I used to just be exposed to self-help books. But ever since I've been reading memoirs, I love reading people's life journeys and stuff like that. And I really learn a lot from memoirs as well. And that being said, what is your favorite nonfiction book of 2020? So it is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Stories from the Cemetery Crematorium, I'm not sure, by Caitlin Doughty. This book is a must read on death. It's basically like a whole anecdote on death, and it's Caitlin Doughty's memoir um, when she used to work in the death industry. I think she still works in the death industry, and it talks about a lot of things that she learned in her beginner days with respect to the dead body, basically. So that's my favorite nonfiction read of 2020, and one book that you're really looking forward to reading in 2021. So nonfiction wise, one book I'm really looking forward to read is K. Shailaja's memoir. She has a new memoir coming up, and I'm looking forward to read it because so if you don't know, she still is the health minister of the state of Kerala, my home state, and one of the things that people don't know is that so there is something called the Kerala model in order to fight the coronavirus, and it kind of was taken forward from the Nipah model. So I think about 2 years back, there were some cases of the Nipah virus in Kerala, and many of the markets, including markets where they sell meat, had shut down because of the Nipah virus. And the main agenda was not to let this virus spread among people. So at that time, Shailaja teacher, as she's called, had taken forward this initiative that she wanted to ensure that anybody who's come in contact with any patient who's contracted the disease should not should go into isolation. And basically, Kerala had seen a corona style pandemic already during the term, so they could deal with the coronavirus very well. So I think she should include this because she's a very able health minister as well, and also a woman, a politician in power. Also, she was a teacher. That's why she's called Shailaja teacher, and people who know her call her teacher. So that's how that is. So yeah, that's one memoir I'm very much looking forward to read in 2021. And otherwise, I do have a lot of fiction books that I'm looking forward to read, but I've still not decided. Those are just like haywire. But I know that once Shailaja teacher's memoir comes out, I'm reading it. So that's that. So the next one is Krishna Kumar asks, "What's a question you always secretly wish someone asked you?" And the answer of it. Actually, I like people asking me any random questions in general, and I don't secretly wish someone asked me something, because even if someone doesn't ask me that thing, I'll anyway give them an answer. For example, like if you ask me my favorite fictional read or non-fictional read, I already have like videos and posts on them. So that's my answer to the question. I don't have any secretly wished, secret wishes with respect to questions. Okay, cool. Okay, the next one is Kieran from KD Books. Hi Kieran. Okay, ask, why do you love the Man Booker, and what is it about the books that intrigue you? So so basically with the Man Booker, I can tell you this much, that my first exposure to literary fiction came from Man Booker. Okay, I think one of the first Man Booker prize winning books that I read was Life of Pi by Jan Martel, and before that I had also read couple of books from book of winning authors, and I really love the writing style. And the point is, the book of books that I was reading made me realize that I should be exploring more of this genre and more of this kind of, I would say, non-commercialized books. Like you talk about Salman Rushdie, or you talk about Jan Martel, Julian Barnes, and these people are people whose books I've really enjoyed. Julian Barnes not so much, and I even loved Aravind Adiga's The White Tiger, and I think that really set me going, because I had only read like Julian Barnes and Jan Martel, and I read Aravind Adiga, and I was like, yo, this is what I want to read now in my life. This is the book that I want to I really love the book a lot. Okay, although many Indians may differ in the answer, but yeah. That being said, I just want to let you know that that the Man Booker Prize has always intrigued me, because my first introduction to literary fiction comes from the Booker Prize, and that's why I keep following the Booker Prize anyway, however I want to. And also, I think this has to do also with the fact that, as you know, till one point of time, the Booker was only open to Commonwealth countries, and India is a Commonwealth country. So, until a point of time, if there was any international award where Indian books would be like highlighted a lot, it would be the Man Booker Prize. Like, be it V.S. Naipaul as well, like, you know, he's won it like what, about 60 years back. So all of these things are like still fresh in people's minds, and that's why people in India like the Booker, although not many follow it. But this is why I follow the Booker, because I really like exploring these books that I would have never read if it wouldn't have won the Booker. But now maybe my thoughts are different, because I didn't like the book that won the Booker Prize in 2020. So I would still follow the Booker Prize, because I still feel that their long listing and short listing system does involve the non-commercial books. But then I would not be just reading the winners from now on. I'll be reading at least like all of the short list, if not all of the long list. So that's that. Okay, now let's go on to the next question. Joe Smith, are there any places you'd like to visit in the world because of the books you've read? Yes, Joe, I would love to visit Africa. Okay, I've never stepped onto the continent of Africa. I would love to visit South Africa, Ghana, like Zimbabwe, like all the books that I've actually like read are from these three countries in Africa, and I would really love to visit like Africa in general. Also, there are historical events that I would like to go back to as well. Like when I read Hilary Mantel's trilogy, the Wolf Hall trilogy, I wanted to go back to, you know, 1500s England and stay there and just be like a ghostly spectator of whatever is going on. So, you know, I do like to historically travel as a ghost to places as well when I read books. But yeah, for now, I want to visit Africa because I really, really like African literature, and also I love the way, you know, Africa is described in these books. So yes, that's that. Thank you for the question, Joe. I mean, it's a very interesting one. I had to think about it a bit. The next one is by Margaret. Margaret asks, have you ever felt insecure about your reading choices? Did BookTube make it worse or better? And what do you recommend for handling other people's unwanted opinions? Congrats. Oh, thanks, Margaret. Okay, so have you felt insecure about your reading choices? So basically, yes, I have felt insecure about my reading choices. Like I think there was one point of time that I felt like I should not be reading a certain kind of book because I did not know what would people say, and you know, it's just like for me, so someone like me who doesn't like stereotyping things, the world likes to stereotype things and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like as I've grown older, I've realized that it's okay to be insecure about your reading choices. Like just f the world, f everything, like just do whatever the f you want to. Like I've realized that particular emotion a lot, and let me just tell you, BookTube has made it better. Okay, so one of the things that I do like actively read, you know, on a very occasional basis as a palate cleanser at Wattpad books. Okay, and Wattpad books are my guilty pleasure. I've even written a book on Wattpad, but that doesn't stop me from reading, like, you know, books that are actually published in the real world. So BookTube has made it like made that kind of insecurity, like it's removed that insecurity from me, because for me BookTube is that safe space where I don't want to be judged on the books that I'm reading. And in, like I'm very open about the fact that I do read Wattpad books. My description box contains the you know, I would say the book that I've written on Wattpad as well. So it's a known fact, and I don't want to be insecure about such things anymore, because like I said, the world loves stereotyping things and I hate stereotyping things, and it is okay. It's completely fine. And yes, BookTube has made it better for me, because BookTube is like that safe community, like I see it. And if I see anybody toxic, I just don't follow them, or I just stop watching their videos. So because I don't want to consume their content. And the last question, and what do you recommend for handling other people's unwanted opinions? Like I said, I don't care. Like, you have your opinion, you're entitled to your opinion. And the maximum I do when I see an unwanted opinion is to just let them know that, okay, this is what you feel, this is what I feel, and I understand your opinion, and I hope you understand mine. And otherwise, at the end of the day, the world is full of opinions. So that's how I handle it. Like, you are your biggest priority, your reading life is your biggest priority, and you need to know what you need to do in order to give yourself a good reading life. So it's like that. So yeah, thanks for the question. This was a challenging question because I do remember, like, I was talking about this in my thank you 2020 video, where I talk about this thing with people commenting on my bullet journal video and telling me how shitty it was. So yeah, I mean, I've been there, seen that, and answering this question, yeah, it makes me feel very nice. Okay, so the next one. Okay, so this is not a question. Ankit says 1K yay. Also looking forward to the 9-day video series. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. We are done with this video series. This is the last video in the series, by the way. And the next one is Kurushika asks, ma'am, I love to read books. It is just that I don't know where can I get cheap books in Mumbai. Can you please tell me? So of course, I would recommend following my video which says book haul number 1, books from Mumbai. And you know that particular one, they sell cheap books. These are like booksellers that you can contact on WhatsApp, and you can do it. I'll link it in the description box below if you want. And also cheap places, Matunga, Kulava Causeway. Like, getting cheap books in India is like pretty easy these days because there's a lot of stuff. Although I would recommend buying from independent booksellers on the street. I know many in Dadar as well. So yeah, there are many places in Bombay where you can get cheap books. Also the books by weight sale. How can I forget the books by weight sale? So the books by weight sale is held by Butterfly Books, and you can follow them on Facebook. They're just called Butterfly Books. Go check them out. And yeah, that's that. That's where you can buy cheap ones. And okay, Paula from Draw Your Book asks, congrats, so 1K, thank you. My questions: what is your favorite place in Mumbai? What is the author you would most like to meet? Okay, so my favorite place in Mumbai is actually okay, now that's a good question. Actually, I like the Marine Drive stretch of Mumbai a lot, okay? And I like it in the mornings when it's not crowded. I like that stretch a lot. I also like the, how do I call it? The quiet lanes of Parsi Colony, somewhat in Tardev, in the Warden Road area. And these are, so for me, like, my favorite places are those places where I can just like walk quietly and just like chill, just walk. That's it, right? Because I think one of the biggest things in Mumbai is that space becomes a huge issue. For example, even with books, like, you can buy 100 books, but you won't have space to keep them. So it's like space is a huge issue in Mumbai, and like apartments are becoming smaller and smaller because it's a space issue. So yeah, I like spacious areas. I like spacious places and places where you can walk, jog along, and I really love like quiet, serene places and not crowded ones per se. So those are my like favorite places in Mumbai. And as for what is the author you would like to meet, would most like to meet, I think at this point of time I would like to meet two of my favorite female authors who are alive. And the first one would be Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, because I just want to sit down and have a conversation with her about India and Indian mythology. And also I would like to meet Elizabeth Acevedo, because again, she is a Dominican American writer. I love her works, although her books fall into the YA contemporary category, it kind of transcends a lot of ages, because you will be able to relate with their story and with the protagonist in the story as well. So these are the two authors I would actually like to meet IRL. So that's that. The next one is so Hema Priya actually. Hema Priya asks, okay, she has a lot of questions here. Let me try to answer them all. What is the first book you read? So the first book that I read, which my parents tell me that I actually read, I hope this counts, because I was maybe like 9 months old, and I would sit with my mom with my alphabet book open, and my mom would go through all the alphabets and be like A for apple, and So in that book, B was for buffalo, okay? And me being 9 months old, I couldn't say buffalo. I would say chapello, okay? So it was A for apple, B for chapello. And that's like my parents' memory of me reading a book, because every morning I would like open all my books, the children's books or all these alphabet books I had, and I would sit with them and be like A for apple, B for chapello, and like it would be very funny. Now that I don't remember this, right? My parents tell me this, so it's a very funny incident. But that being said, I think the first book I read was, I think, as an adolescent, preteen, like a preteen. I think it would be Famous Five. I really used to like Famous Five a lot by Enid Blyton, although she's a problematic author now. But I grew up reading a lot of Famous Five. So, although I don't remember much, I remember the first book of Famous Five, and I remember there was this character with like who had a boy cut, and I really admired her a lot, because even I wanted a boy cut, but my parents would not let me cut my hair. Like in India, long hair is a huge thing. I have long hair, and this is out of choice, by the way. But then, like, I really used to admire her a lot. Uh, how did you happen to like how did it happen, like how you got into reading? So basically, with like the first toy, when I was 9 months old, like my parents got me into the reading habit. So since then I have had this affinity with books, and so in my house we have three bookshelves full of books. So this is my bookshelf. My parents have one, and my sister also has one. So but my parents and my sister have like academic books. I have like non-fiction and fiction, like that's how that is. So we've always been surrounded by books, and my mom kind of was, she's been in the teaching field a bit. So she basically would have a lot of students who would give her academic books after they had passed out. So I was always surrounded by books. I was always like I was amidst all the books in the world, and it was very, very much interesting. And that being said, yeah, that's that. But also, one of the biggest things that I have to attribute my reading to is crossword, because when I was little, I used to go to the nearest crossword, I used to sit there and read all these books. So that's how I ended up reading a lot of Famous Five, because I used to just be like I don't know, like 12 years old, I used to go to Crossword, I used to read Famous Five, and I used to come back home. I had even read a lot of Agatha Christie, but I think Agatha Christie was a bit like high for my taste at that point of time, so I used to just stick with Famous Five. So that's how I got into reading. What is that one favorite book of yours everyone hates? I think I can only think of one book here, and that is Ghost at a Watchman by Harper Lee. Everyone hates this book. Goodreads has a very bad rating for this book. I love this book, by the way. I gave it like 4 or 5 stars. And the thing is that, like, the reason why people hate Ghost at a Watchman is because it's a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird, but it's like a very hateful sequel, right? Because it shows a huge rift between blacks and whites, while the first book, To Kill a Mockingbird, just showed like the thing. But I really love this book because it showed the dichotomy of that particular situation, because in the first book we see how a white man is fighting for a black man, but in the second book we see how the same two people are like on opposite sides of things, right? So I really like the dichotomy of it, because it made me realize that humans and human psychology in general is very convoluted, and they would only favor those things that they really believe in, and that's what happened with Ghost at a Watchman. So that's something that everyone hates, but I really love. The third one and the last question of hers is a book that you didn't like from your favorite author. Uh, Actually, I wouldn't say I don't like. Yeah, I think my recent one, Transcendent Kingdom by Jasi. I have the book somewhere here. Jasi has been one of my favorite authors ever since I read Homegoing, and I didn't like Transcendent Kingdom. So I think she's like the latest example of a book I didn't like from my favorite author, and I really hope Rajasi like hits the Homegoing benchmark in her next book. So that's that. And the final question. Wow, we're only like already like 30 minutes in. Okay, Kirsten asks. Oh, Kirsten says, Congrats on 1K. Jyotsna, I hope I'm not too late with my question. Oh, thank you so much, Kirsten. So the question is, I love reading translated works, but I always feel I'm missing out by not being able to read them in their original language. If you could read one book written in its original language instead of translated into a language you speak, what would it be? Now, the thing is that my major, like 100% of my reading runs in English, although I do speak 5 languages, right? One of the biggest realizations for me has been that the written language is much more beautiful and a bit complex as compared to the spoken language. So, although I speak 5 languages, including English, my most comfortable language to read is in English. So, if you ask me, okay, so I do understand, yes, in translated works from one work to another. I do agree that it things get lost in translation at times. I agree with it, but it says if you could read one book written in its original language instead of reading a translated which you speak, what would it be? So I think I would have to recommend the only book. I know this is not a good answer, but the only book that I've read in another language, and this was mainly for school, and it's a very critically acclaimed Marathi book which is called Shyamchi Ai by Sane Guruji. So Shyamchi Ai is actually a memoir, and Sane Guruji was a freedom fighter, and he talks about the memories of his mother and how his mother was a very nice and a gentle woman, and how she has impacted his life a lot. Okay, and it's a very beautiful book. Also, there are a lot of books that when written in their original language, they sound very like beautiful and nice, and this is one of those languages because Sane Guruji also writes Marathi like in a very nice and a beautiful way, and I really really appreciated this a lot. Also, that being said, for books that I cannot read or I find difficult reading, I generally prefer audiobooks in the original language, considering that I understand the language. But it depends upon like how well versed I am in that language in order to understand it. So one of those would be Misha by S. Harish, which is written in my mother tongue Malayalam, but I cannot read the script, so I basically like tried listening to the audiobook. Although I was slow with it and I gave up after some time, but that's also a good option. If I could have like, because from the part that I could hear, I realized that it's a very beautifully written book, but yeah, it's a bit like a higher level of the language, if that makes sense. So yeah, I hope this answer helped you, by the way, and I hope yeah, this makes sense. And also, of course, like there must be a translation for Shyamchi Ai. I'll try to find it and send it to you, Kirsten. So yeah, I'll do that. Okay, cool. So that's it. Those are all the questions. We are actually like 31 minutes right now. At 31 minutes right now, and thank you everyone for sending me questions. I kind of answered a lot of them today, and yeah, that's it. This is the video. That's it. Thank you so much for your questions, and if you have more questions, again, don't comment on this video. Please go to the original Q&A video and put it there, and if I get like a lot more questions there, if YouTube decides to send me notifications, then I'll make another video which is Q&A part 2. So thank you so much and much appreciated. Thank you for staying here, and I'll see you on my weekly reads on Wednesday. Bye.